Thank you for introducing both of us, in particular Yuvan. I think you need no more introduction than what's been given, but this particular book, you must regard it as, in a way, your prime book. It's almost like a manifesto for yourself, as well as for the environment. Robert Macfarlane, who'll be joining us later, I don't know where he is, but he's going to, says, wrote of your book, it's a book that sings and pulses with the singular, generous vision of its remarkable author. Yuvan Aves takes the reader deep into the intertidal zone, that in-between space where land meets sea, and also where being meets world. This is at once a work of detailed, shimmering natural history by an exceptional field naturalist and a profound meditation on what it means to be human. Yuvan, I'd like first to ask you something about your own background, the origins of this, if you like, fascination with environment and the natural world. Can you tell us something about how this developed and from what it came?
If I might just, before that, I brought something to this conversation. One of my favorite books of nature writing is Robert's Underland, A Deep Time Journey. And about that book, he and Barry Lopez have a conversation. And during that conversation, Robert brings a fossil of a whale ear and he keeps it there. And many conversations he does that just as a presence and just as witness. And I was coming here and a friend of mine a few days ago gave me a trilobite fossil. A trilobite is a very hard-shelled arthropod which roam the oceans in plenty, everywhere on the seafloor about 400 million years ago. And this is about 430 million years old from Utah. And I just want to keep this here as presence, as witness from as ocean and coast. Yeah. And is Rob here? Is there? Oh, okay.
Where's he gone?
Oh, hi.
I'm here. Can I be seen and heard?
Oh, hello. Good.
Hello.
He's here.
Hi, friends.
Okay. Colin, you asked me about my entry into environmentalism. I studied in a Krishnamurti school where the philosophy of J. Krishnamurti was grounded in the aliveness which was human and more than human, and as such, wisdom is a space which comes from, which exists in that space. And it was very useful for me to grow up in a fundamental practice of inquiry and questioning, which was, the practice of the school. I also have my mother who's here, who if you look at the great educators, you take Montessori, she'd say, follow the child, observe the child very, very deeply, let the child guide you into your parenting or your teaching. And my mom did that, saw me running after goats and insects and all manner of other things. And she fed that very, very well at a very crucial time. But also, most importantly, what I found was, I went through a period of very intense suffering, which you'll perhaps read about in the book, in my adolescence, when I had to actually run away from home and stay in a campus called Pathashala. It's a large residential space, very in tune with nature. And nature was the way I found to recast suffering and to be in touch with a space and presence which is beyond one's shrunken selfhood, which causes one to suffer and turn suffering into something like connection, fertility, and a life-driving force. And somewhere there lies the connection. And, yeah.
This was a Krishnamurti Foundation school, wasn't it? And yeah. And then you went on to you studied at the Indira Gandhi Open University and moved from zoology to physics, which was a fairly amazing transformation. Robert, I know, will have much to say about this, but I'd like to say something about that quality of attention you stress all the time through the book. It's our quality of attention to the world, to the natural world, to ourselves, our relationship to it, our limited knowledge of ourself. You are always very modest about your own capacities or human capacities to really understand. It's as if human beings, according to Aristotle, was at the top of the tree and understood more than everybody and everything else. You nicely question this or put it in perspective, that your vision will be different from that, say, of a hermit crab or pelican, but it's not necessarily superior, it's just different. Could you tell us something about that perception of yours about our own relationship and even the fluidity of it?
This book courses through 4 or 5 different things. I was at a different literature fest in Bangalore, and this was before the book released, and somebody asked me, "What's your book about?" And I'd frozen and given about 5-6 seconds, and I sort of pieced it together. But one of the things it looks at is this quality of attention and being conscious, and as the living world being a powerful entry point into the nature of oneself, one's mind, and how the mind operates, and how human relationalities operate, but also the nature of reality, of existence beyond binaries, of beyond constructs and concepts, and the aliveness and beingness which exists so powerfully in that space of what we seem to call nature, as if it was out there, that one cannot miss it. And these 2 threads run through the book. This quality of attention, and attention, in that quality of attention, there is no center paying attention, there's just attention, and whatever is birthed in that process of witnessing.
I don't know if we can call Robert in now. Has he gone? He's disappeared.
Am I audible to you?
Hello, Robert.
Hello.
Would you like to say anything? Because I know that you have actually traveled, you've been in the field with Yuvan, and I'm sure we'd wish to have a word here.
Lovely, thank you very much. Greetings, dear friend Yuvan, dear friend Colin. What a joy to share a few minutes with you, and greetings to everyone in Jaipur from here in very chilly Cambridge. And I will just raise this item and let it join our presence. This is the fossilized inner ear bone, the tympanic bulla of a Miocene era whale. This is the object that Yuvan referred to earlier. So to your trilobite, Yuvan, I bring greetings from the Miocene whale. What a privilege to celebrate this extraordinary book with you all. And yes, I have been in the field with Yuvan. He has opened my eyes and my mind in ways that I could never have foreseen. And that comes from that quality of attention which he has, which you have spoken about. And also this, I think, profound selflessness, which we might also call a generosity of relation with the world. And Yuvan, I did want to follow up on Colin's mention of attention that doesn't separate itself from action. And I wondered if you could connect attention to action for us.
In writing this book, I, I got nervous. It took about 4 years to put this together. The first person I told about when this was even a figment of an idea, and this was thanks to a large port we are protesting against in next to a lagoon called Pulicat, India's second largest brackish water wetland, and a massive port by a massive corporate was being built there, which would sort of erase this entire waterscape. And as such, that drew me to the Intertidal to say, what can we do to stop this? And in collaboration with fisher communities and other activists and stakeholders of all kinds. And while writing it, at that point, I wrote to Rob and saying, I want to write something like this. And he immediately, admired and appreciated. And I was like, wow, somebody like him thinks of this way, and I'm going to pursue. One of the things I found was that as a writer, often, other big writers, they say that you read about 4 or 5 times as much as you might write. That was not the case for me. I would read sometimes lesser than I would write, or equal to, or sometimes, much in minority. And the process of writing the book for me was importantly direct observation, direct action, standing up with and for places and communities, and the kind of co-authorship that allows for, which then in some sense, pure, scoring of literature doesn't. I don't know, not that I did not read at all, but there was an active effort to have co-authorship of the dragonfly and the bird and the ocean and the humpback dolphin and the ghost crab into the manuscript and the way it flowed and ebbed and tided. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, rather prematurely, what has happened to the Pulicat initiative and to other initiatives, because in the book you specify several big mechanized harbors, which this is all, I should say, in the area of Chennai, which is your hometown. You describe how the currents build up silt on one side of such a harbor, and it gets eroded on the other because it's starved of the silt. And you are involved in a big environmental activist initiative. And I'm wondering, since the book, really, because publication always takes a year, I was wondering what has happened. How fruitful have your initiatives been?
So one of the regions explored through the book and the livingscape of that is a place called Kaliveli. It's about 100 kilometers south of Chennai, and there tens of thousands of migratory birds come there. It's olive ridley sea turtle nesting ground. And during the time of writing the book, I had filed a case in court against 2 large fishing harbors coming there with their own illegalities and sort of a lot of other problems with it. Sperm whales in hundreds have their calves just 40 to 60 kilometers from the coast there. So if you had trawlers parked there and moving, they'd all just get slaughtered. And so about several months after writing the book, and we did solid research that place, visited so many times. There were threats to the research team going there because of 2 rich villages actually wanted the harbor there, and we have won that case, and the harbors are not coming there, and that place has been protected, which you won't read in the book, but that's something which has happened. And
Bravo. Very well.
With Pulicat Lagoon, we are up against a mammoth of a corporate, I don't want to mention. And we are just gathering, public solidarity for it. That is our main, and just evoking the place and its utter crucial importance. Cities exist because waterscapes exist. And recently we had Cyclone Michong in Chennai, and our office space, of the organization I run, Pallu Trust, was under 4 feet of water. We lost everything. We lost all our computers, we lost everything, and we had to fundraise. And which is to say that, unfortunately, my home as well as my office sitting on a marshland, which I didn't make the choice to build and sit there. But Pulikkad would be Chennai's most important flood drainage, connecting with the Kosasthalya River, and this port sort of comes there, blocks off that, and their own environmental impact assessment shows that a lot of places will be under 3 feet, 2 feet of water quite casually, affecting at least 10 million people with direct disastrous flooding. We are still fighting for that not to happen. We've been able to fight, create a lot of public ruckus to postpone what, in legalese they call a public hearing, where, people come and speak there. But if it looks to the public hearing holder that there's a lot of opposition, they will not conduct it, because then that will be registered and the project will be cancelled. They'll postpone it. And it's been postponed thrice now. So we just want to do that indefinitely. Yeah.
Your field work, as you might call it here, is so exact, and so it seems complete. It's really astonishing. You must sometimes have felt that you were building up an archive of this whole area, with perhaps a awful foreboding that it wasn't going to last. In some instances, you give statistics of decline of some sea creature. And did you ever feel a little that you were, as it were, establishing it, at least in words, even if it were to vanish?
You're speaking about the language documentation we were doing?
Well, yes, the archive that you are, you really are building up an archive in words of all those areas around Chennai in particular, the words will last, even if some of the environment does not.
Yeah. So, in the book's acknowledgements, I refer to different people and communities as sea turtles. Sea turtles, if you read in many cultures, human beings learned, it is said, to sort of navigate currents and understand seascapes through following sea turtles. And of course, Robert is one of my important sea turtles. Also, the fisher communities along the coast, they've taught me to perceive wind and coast and ocean in a very embodied way. For instance, in Chennai, there are 9 words for winds. And I'll recount a quick story here. So one of my big teachers of windscape is one Palayamanna, who's a fisher elder in Chennai. And he would just feel the wind, and he'll be like, that guy is taking sardine nets today, he's going to come back hungry. And then 6 hours later, that would happen. Or he would say things like, 32 years ago, my uncle and I went out into sea, and the wind was blowing from the east, Irang Kate, they say in Tamil. And I'm like, I don't know what the wind was blowing like yesterday or this morning. There's an animo memory there, which, having learned that, I understood. And, if I might narrate one, sort of comical interaction we had. And he's teaching me winds, and he's saying, you have this wind, there's going to be an upwelling, downwelling. How do you see an upwelling? Look at the strand lines, what gathers there on the coast. And he's telling me all this, and I'm reeling. And he says, okay, now tell me which direction, and I mess it up. And he's like, if my, one of the fisher folk, if I'm teaching this and if they did this, immediately I have to whack them. Okay. Then I've told him, like, do children learn if you whack them? And I've brought in all my educational, learnings and philosophy. It's like, do you attach fear to learning? Do you all that? And he's like, listen, you are a land teacher, The ground is stable under your feet, very predictable. Yeah, and you can, so therefore you can speak this philosophy of fear, non-fear. This, I'm a sea teacher. You have to specifically attach your fear to the right wind and current and creature, otherwise you'll die. Okay, so so yeah, that was, yeah, that was mind-boggling, but yeah.
Just to go back momentarily to the specific book, I should say that it's written in a diary form. So it gives a great possibility for all sorts of information, particularly that which means an interaction with fishing communities and others. It also gives not just space, the predominant space, to natural history and to wonderful descriptions of it, but to all sorts of asides about different ecological phenomena like that of the wind. And so it's a most satisfying, I think, medium for you, that he follows the seasons, 2 years of seasons, 3 monsoons, so that you can see the development of species in your own tank, in your home. So it's an evolving thing. And just to give you an idea of the quality of the writing, because this is typical on almost every page, there's something like this. This is a description, when I can find it. This is about ghost crabs, one of the many species that fascinate you, I think. And to some extent, there are certain recurring motifs here of phenomena that are particularly important to you in your meditation, like the croaking of frogs outside your home, and the sound of the waves, the importance of the sound of waves breaking, and one's attention to waves breaking, which produces a sort of knowledge of the sea, which is different from that which we would ordinarily experience. But this is Yuvan writing about these ghost crabs. To me, the life and physiology of ghost crabs is sheer science fiction and the stuff of mythology. Ghost crabs are edge-of-the-world denizens living on the foggy cusp of land, sea, sand, and sky. They have lungs and gills to breathe in both air and water. They can hear and drink with their hair, with the hair on their feet. They speak in pincer signs, stridulations, and gut rumbles. They have panoramic 360-degree vision, and the cylindrical retinas atop their eerie, ghostly periscope eyes can see you coming from 50 meters away. For a ghost crab, the horizon is not a mere line in the sky, but a full circle. They move and live and breed to lunar rhythms, feeling the moon's tug in their blood, thickening and thinning. Well, Robert, we must call you in here. There must be an awful lot you have to say.
How wonderful to hear you read those lines. Some of my favorite in this stylistically as well as politically remarkable book. A line I noted down was one that one could miss really, but it sounds like this: the inshore current is hot chocolate with sediment. And what I love in that, Yuvan, is the way that you elide the simile. It is not that the inshore current is like hot chocolate. It is as full with sediment as hot chocolate is with its particles. The inshore current is hot chocolate with sediment. And something about the dynamism of the way you use language brings it alive in the mind's eye and the mind's ear. I have a question for you, Yuvan, which is that it feels as though in India at the moment there is a wonderful surging of nature writing, if we want to call it that. I am thinking of Arati Kumar Rao's Margin Lands, Siddharth Pandey's epic poem of the Himalayas, Fossil, yourself, of course, Nayaz Sinha's Wild and Willful, Harini Nagendra's work on urban trees. It feels a very energetic and committed and political and also literary time for thinking and writing about nature. Is that how it feels to you and in the country?
I think there is a resurgence, like you're saying. By the way, Siddharth is in the audience, Rob. Yeah. So, yeah. So I think there's a kind of resurgence which is like you're saying, breaking the binaries of ecological, psychological, political, social, and doing away with all those concepts and constructs and speaking and writing of it as it is, and as it really is, and increasingly so. But one does feel. I was in a event hosted by BNHS, and one of the people said, the last good nature writing was Iha and E.H. Atkins and M. Krishnan. M. Krishnan is, of course, is amazing. But then there is also a fixation of this British period very strongly in most of readers of this kind, and there's also a resurgence. There's also some stagnation, and I'm wondering how currents will meet, and it's just exciting to have community around this. There's also Pradeep Krishan in the audience, who's one of India's amazing naturalists and writers. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yuvan, throughout the book, you suggest that there are lessons for us to learn from different species, and not just in your own discipline. You could almost call it of the attention given to almost everything you observe, whether it's the larger species, whether it's whales, or whether it's just algae or little starfish. And you suggest somewhere, for instance, or you say that, for instance, the lives of these many creatures, I think you mentioned starfish among them, may give, I think it's termites and bees, that you suggest have a sort of trans-species democracy, which is something that human beings have been very bad at. And maybe you could say something about this, this idea that these have something even specific to teach us. For yourself, you mention that as it were, the lugworms and the ordinary intertidal creatures that cleanse the seashore in a way, and by their own bodily processes replenish it. How you felt that was a metaphor, a lesson for yourself to look at the difficulties in your past and find that you could make those difficulties generative and creative in the way that those apparently humble intertidal species do. So can you say a bit about what lessons we have to learn?
Yeah. There's this very less known, as far as I know, book of Carl Jung. It's called Earth Has a Soul, and it is compiled by one of his assistants, Meredith Sabini. And towards the end of his life, Jung has gotten interested in ecology because he is noticing all cultures or events of awakening in human consciousness, if one might call that. It seems to have always been entangled with an immersion in what is more than human, in a livingness which is beyond and which is accessible. And he talks about how perception, meaning making comes from, for instance, I think he gives the example of a web being something a spider builds, and if we and how language is, I think, essentially metaphor, and nothing absolute or ultimate about language, or even shapes of neural connections in our brain. If it were not for that metaphor of a web, what would be missing in our perception? Rob writes in Understory, there's a line, he says, trees give us words for mind. And everything from dendrite, axon, dendritic arbors, all of these are words we have for nerves. And so, I've been interested in this, of a place of wisdom everybody goes to and finds and is accessible, anything from the Bible or the Islam or Buddhism, where there is a direct insight into the oneness of everything, and that has happened under a tree or in a desert by the hills, or even as Ramana Maharishi, who said the Arunachala hill showed me Shiva. And that being the guru, there is that, I think, non-replaceable place of wisdom which the living world, which we are sort of completely entangled in, cell to cell, each cells. If that answered your question, I don't know, something.
Yes,
yeah?
yes.
Okay. Yeah. I take one example of, for instance, the detritivore is a metaphor I evoke in one of the chapters, where the detritivore is the lugworm, is the earthworm, dung beetle, bunch of other creatures which turn, what I call the shit of life into something like fertile soil. And what would that mean, for instance, within our psychology, where we experience dysfunction or suffering, and what is that detritivore ethic, to be able to convert that into something which is life-giving and driving. And that's a metaphor I explore in one of the chapters, and it's a direct lesson, and it's a lesson which is not an idea, but a direct observation.
You mentioned this in your meditation, not mentioned, but it's a thread in your meditative practice, isn't it? So, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Another thing you talk about is your relationship with children. You've taught more than 1,000, I think you say, and you see in children an unspoilt vision, or a different vision anyway. And you talk about how very educative it is for children to experience the natural world. Children who are, of course, many stuck in urban environments. And I think you stress that it gives them a better social sense, a sense of their needing to understand the sheer diversity in the world, the diversity of species, the diversity of ways of seeing. Could you say something about that, and your own, you say that it may even have come from your own childhood?
Yeah. One of the things I've very magically seen in children is experiencing otherness as a normal thing makes one connect to all forms of otherness when one grows up. And biodiversity is a powerful political science teacher, and in ways subliminal and intangible. There is an inherent wildness in children, one sees, the sense of self, the idea and construct of self, and all that which accumulates over time and threatens and makes creates conflict, suffering, all of that seems to not exist in children. There's a, one of the things I love doing is sitting with, just observing primary school children, and there's a sense of abandon and dancing and and just being, where you see that the construct of self actually expands into all that there is, and that is beautiful to watch, and I'm very grateful to be in doing that on a daily basis. If I might just share one more story, and it's to sort of it's a story of standing up for a wild place. There is a bird sanctuary, India's oldest bird sanctuary, Vedandangal Bird Sanctuary, where tens of thousands of birds come to breed from all over Tamil Nadu, pelicans, painted storks, open-bill storks, spoonbills, and so on. And what happened was, during COVID lockdown, and a pharmaceutical industry wanted to expand, and as a response to that, the sanctuary was going to be shrunk by the government because these guys are powerful, and they were already letting toluene into the waters, and the farmers were having skin disease to mangoes growing like peanuts, and kidney failures, all kinds of other things, bird carcasses being found often, and they wanted to expand. And what happened was, any kind of legal work, public work was not possible during the lockdown. But then in about 4 or 5 years previous to that, I'd been taking children every season, which is between November to March. Right now is the season. At least 8-10 batches of them. And these children came and say, hey, they're going to screw up this place. What are you doing? I'm like, oh, is that so? I didn't see the news. And I saw, and I didn't know what to do. And, I had just been part of, in a very small way with a campaign in Assam, for Dehing Patkai rainforest, where Assamese students did art for it, and it got that place declared as a national park because thousands were pouring in. And I said, what, let's make art. And 5-6 schools started making art. We gave it to, media, and other schools caught on. It became like a fad across Tamil Nadu. Art was pouring in. Every single newspaper, Tamil, English, were reporting about it. After this, 2 cases were filed in court by other parties against the industry, as well as the pollution, as well as reduction of the bird sanctuary. And this happened just when the Tamil Nadu elections were coming. So then the incoming party was like, hey, vote for us, we'll protect the sanctuary. And they came into power. As within a month since they came into power, they have a line in their government order saying the sanctuary will be protected forever. And that was largely achieved by children's, way of doing things. Yeah.
I remember myself when I first saw the Vedandangal Bird Sanctuary 60 years ago, how wonderful it was, and the sheer multiplicity of species. I couldn't believe it, coming from London, to see flights of pelicans flying in, and how, in your book, the idea of it being threatened or reduced was truly terrible in my memory. Just one little side thing, your system of research, of course, involves walking. You say how important it is to be walking. And this is familiar to me as a travel writer. I think it was St. Augustine who said, solvitur ambulando, it is solved by walking. It's very restorative. And I think you mentioned that somebody, I forget the authority, said that American civilization was being destroyed by the car. It was breaking up community.
Jane Jacobs.
Yeah. That people had thought the television was going to do it. But actually, the great enemy was the car. And I guess you would still hold to that.
It's sort of a no-brainer. The pace of walking, and so many other, anybody from Anna Singh to Donna Haraway to Rob's old ways, which I would read when I was, I was gifted 3 nature books by the principal of my school. The authors were Annie Dillard, M. Krishnan, and Robert. When I was 16, I would read his old ways and have a completely wrong imagination of what I forget the name of the place he would walk in. And I would imagine the areas of Chengalpet where I would say, and I would just walk like he would describe walking. And in that sense, the pace of noticing and the pace of entanglement and sensing entanglement with everything happens at that space. I run an internship. I call it urban wilderness walks, and the idea is that I train young people to be powerful nature educators. So they over 6 months they're constantly engaging public in their local neighborhoods. And taking them on walks. And yeah.
I must break in there because we are almost over, and I'm sure there will be some questions from the floor. So please. We have, I fear, just 2 minutes left. So any questions that anybody has? There's one over here.
My name is Kanva. Hello, Yuvan. It's lovely to hear about the book. I haven't read it, but I just kind of booked it for myself, and I look forward to reading this. I saw your name is Aves, and I'm a bird watcher, so there's some connection there. And of course, Rob, I've been a big fan of yours, for many, many years, and read all your books as well. Very inspiring. So I have one complaint, Rob, that you stopped reciting your poetry on the Twitter for the last couple of years. So I hope you pick up that thing again.
And the word for the day. That also. I have one more complaint. Yeah.
And the word for the day. And Yuvan, I just want to come back to your book. Actually, of course, I've read Rachel Carson's a lot of books, and most of the earlier books before she became really famous through Silent Spring is all about sea and more about marine environment. So, how much have you been inspired by some of Rachel's books? Because those are really inspired writing as well, in the same subject that you're dealing with.
Yeah. Massively is the short answer to that. Her Sea trilogy and her very short essay, which has now become a picture book, Sense of Wonder, where she says, the quality of avarice and greed and all of these things don't go hand in hand with this quality of wonder, where wonder essentially happens when there's no center. And I think the Sea trilogy and her way of looking at the ocean itself as an entity, not as animate, inanimate, but as one living being was greatly formative. Yeah.
Thank you. My apologies that I think the question time is over, and we have no time for more questions. I'm so sorry, but we have to wind up. Thank you.